The era of girl groups has begun and it's here to stay. Fingers crossed. If you are a K-pop fan, then I'm sure you've heard the discussion of how girl groups are consistently overperforming their contemporary boy groups. Whether you agree with this doesn't change the fact that most of the conversation surrounding the scene is dominated by girl groups, with a handful of boy groups holding significant cultural impact. However, someone who's been listening to and keeping up with the genre since the second generation, 2011 to be exact, that before the roles of girl groups and boy groups were reversed. Like in the second generation, you would hardly see girl groups doing the numbers that girl groups do now. So many companies now, their breadwinners are girl groups, which was impossible to say 10 years ago. So before I answer why girl groups are dominating the genre in this discussion sphere, let's look at some unofficial history. The early 2010s gave us amazing girl groups, but it was undeniable that boy groups flourished during this time, while girl groups from big companies rarely received their flowers. If you weren't 21, Wonder Girls or Girls' Generation, the big three, then you were in a very capricious position. Boy groups had the ability to spread their music across fandoms. Therefore, even if you weren't a fan of a specific group, that didn't mean you wouldn't hear their songs. Many boy groups with their loyal fan bases would have decent comebacks consistently, leading to their songs being able to reach non-fans. And when I say non-fans, I don't mean antis, just people who don't follow the group's work. For example, Monsta X. I wasn't their fan, but I always knew when they had a comeback because their fans were so loud and would push their content on many different platforms. Regardless, even if you didn't pay attention to what boy groups are doing, they would appear on your feed. On the other hand, most girl groups would have a very successful comeback that reaches people outside of their fans, but this would not translate to future success. Once the groups released a new song, the hype they had garnered would have already dissipated and they would fall back to obscurity. Like Sistar, which is known as a very popular second-generation girl group, but if I asked a fan to name a Sistar song, well, a non-Sistar fan, that isn't Touch My Body or Shake That, I think they'll struggle. They definitely won't say I Swear, which was released in between their two successful comebacks, but had completely fallen under the radar. One big problem with girl groups, especially outside the big three companies, was that they did not have the consistency that their contemporary boy groups had to generate success. What also didn't help was that companies didn't seem to have faith in girl groups to generate continuous success. So they wouldn't promote them adequately enough in favor of churning new comebacks for their boy groups, or for debuting a new girl group, discarding the girl group for the newest release, or the newest group. Once a girl group did fail because they weren't properly promoted or poorly managed, this would only reaffirm the company's idea that girl groups aren't worth the trouble. It was a cursed, self-fulfilling prophecy that led to many girl groups failing. A reason why boy groups were successful in the 2010s was that they typically attract the fans they deliberately fished for. I don't think it's that surprising or controversial to say that boy groups garner a lot of female fans, while girl groups garner a lot of male fans. And female fans have a tendency that male fans don't, which makes us very powerful when it comes to success, or more specifically, making money. For starters, female fans are more likely to purchase albums, merchandise, and ticket sales. Last year, data was collected by Aladdin that proved that female fans are still the bulk buyers for album sales, with the most successful groups having nearly double the amount of female buyers than male. And even just anecdotally, female fans are more likely to place money on the experience of being a fan, and anyone who's been to offline concerts, festivals, or conventions can tell that. When I went to SM Town's concert, the majority of people in attendance were other girls, women, or feminine presenting people. There were very few men, boys, and male presenting people in the audience. Even if there were, the ratio between men and women was completely unbalanced, not even close to the same. Of course, this is anecdotal and shouldn't be taken too seriously, but it is an honest first-hand observation of mine. For whatever reason, most, not all, but most male fans don't have the same fervor as female fans to purchase as much content from their favorite artists. One thing I did notice was that there was a spike in male purchases in their 20s, and I wonder if that also has something to do with the data, such as pop music in general being considered a feminine hobby and teen boys not wanting to overtly show interest in fear of being teased by classmates. Once they're able to have their own space and own disposable income, they have more freedom to indulge in this more girly interest. Because in my own personal experience, I remember being the people who made most fun of me for having this interest were also my male classmates, not my female classmates. So I can only imagine how a boy who was overtly open about liking pop music and K-pop what kind of like jokes they would receive. This is just a guess from someone who didn't grow up as a boy. So if you are someone who would like to correct this assumption or add onto it in the comments, that would be much appreciated. So what changed in the mid-2010s that caused a lot of female fans to divert their attention from boy groups and onto girl groups? It was 2015-2016 when the great girl groups of the second generation were announcing their disbandments or entering an eternity-long hiatus. Things were not looking good. The future for girl groups was very bleak. Girl group fans were mourning and thirsting for new content, and while the cute schoolgirl concept appeased some fans, others were nowhere near full. But then something happened in early August, something that would shock the landscape for the years to come and completely consume the industry. And what even could that be other than Blackpink? I talked a big game about Blackpink, which I think is deserved regardless if you like them or not. They're a big deal and definitely one of the biggest girl groups of their time. However, they didn't invent the girl crush concept. That's definitely not what I'm trying to say. I definitely know that they are not the originators of this brand, and a lot of their own branding was built upon 21's image, which is something that even YG has claimed. I mean, even 21's image is the YG stable. It's their part of their strategy. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Which, great. Music is totally not about innovation and creativity. Anyways, back to what Blackpink debut signified in the industry. Once Blackpink debuted, they promised a badass and girl crush concept, and boy did they deliver. Compared to their contemporaries, Blackpink definitely was different. They completely abandoned the trend of schoolgirls and jumped right into a more mature concept, at least compared to their contemporaries. And that makes total sense. All the girls were adults, young adults, let's not forget, 18 is just a barely legal adult. I feel some people talking about 18 years old is very weird. Waiting for someone to turn 18 to talk inappropriately about them is very, very creepy. Because of the way people are talking about the new girl group Kiss of Life, calling them grown women, but their prefrontal cortex hasn't even developed, so they are still growing. But regardless, I got off track. Also, I have nothing against Kiss of Life's image. I think the girls have a great relationship with their creative director, so I'm sure they have a say on whether or not they are comfortable with it or not. My issues with certain people. Anyway, my point is from the very beginning, Blackpink set themselves apart from other girl groups. They weren't like the other girl groups. They were cool, and this set them up for a lot of comparison to their contemporaries. Now, it might be hard to believe in 2023, when Blackpink debuted, they were considered the stable of what a debut and performer should be, especially compared to Twice, which makes sense since sonically and visually the two girl groups were each other's opposite in many ways, making it very easy to compare them. But even more so, Twice was supposed to be the new girls' generation, and Blackpink was supposed to be the new 2021. So naturally, these second generation girl group rivalry continued on to the third generation. Because what is peace? I swear, being a multi-stan is the worst, but also the best, but mostly the worst. However, it turned to look as people would look at how stable Blackpink was in their debut performance, and then look at how unstable Twice was in their comeback performance. Look how powerful Blackpink's dances and choreographies are. Twice only do easy to replicate dances. So you get it. Blackpink could do no wrong in their debut year, and that's what other companies wanted so badly for their own girl groups. They wanted what made Blackpink untouchable to their own girl groups. So you have girl groups debuting their girl crush comebacks from many different companies to varying success, because these companies saw what made Blackpink untouchable was their girl crush concept. So while some companies took Blackpink's debut as a sign to try girl crush concepts, other companies saw Blackpink's success and decided to experiment. They saw how successful YG had become doing something new and how deprived K-pop fans were of something new and out of the ordinary, and they took it upon themselves to do exactly that. That's how we got Teen Crush a few years later, and the abundance of space concepts. and I mean abundance. I just think Blackpink's debut really showed companies that you can do something different with your girl groups and you don't have to follow the current trend of K-pop. Ironic considering Blackpink has refused to do anything different with their comebacks as of recently, but whatever, off topic. However, this explains why girl groups fans were receptive to the new girl groups, but why were general fans also rooting for girl groups? Rather than female fans falling in love with girl groups' image, I think it was more of a disillusionment with the boy group's image. While girl group's image turned into a more aspirational, don't you want to be just like me, or wouldn't I be someone you would like to hang out with, rather than solely selling the fantasy that maybe you could date them. Boy groups still relied heavily on the fantasy of, I could potentially be your boyfriend, which is a hard thing to sell. Less and fewer people are subscribing to the idea that idols have to remain single for their delusion of them being your significant other. Also, a person can have multiple friends, but usually only one significant other. Therefore, the idea that I could be an idol's friend seems more feasible since there's no limit to how many friends they can have. This, of course, is a hypothetical, and it's just if you're delusional or young, which is practically the same thing. Just to clarify, I don't believe idols are my friends, and a lot of girl group songs revolve around empowering and bringing the audience into their world, such as, if you listen to our music, then you're cool, you're a bad bitch, or whatever it is they're selling. So it's easier to make a community of listeners of the same group because you're not competing for someone or something, while boy groups use you as if they're speaking to the audience and speaking to exactly one person in the audience. Therefore, while there is a community for fans, there's this underlying competition. It's unconscious, but it's still there. For example, the joke of you can't have the same bias as me for boy groups, which you hardly see people say about girl groups. I've honestly never seen this done in girl groups. So while this is very harmless and mostly just jokes, there is a difference in how fans engage. And I think the stronger community element of girl groups makes it easier for their songs to have a wider reach than boy groups. And that's why you see girl groups outside of the big three now really taking up space in the community. If someone told me a couple years ago that a Starship girl group post Sistar was going to be one of the biggest groups, not girl groups, but group of the year, I would be in disbelief. I honestly would not believe it. I mean, I would be very happy, but I wouldn't believe it. Another point is the massive success of BTS may have hindered boy groups. It's daunting for any boy group to compete with them. They're essentially untouchable, except for some instances with Big Bang in their early years of success, and EXO, but EXO is now on hiatus with most of them in the army. But even then, the reach of BTS is crazy, and I think it's really hard for boy groups to remove themselves from their shadows. Of course, this isn't to diminish the massive success that boy groups of the 4th and 5th generation who are doing great. I just noticed that whenever people talk about boy groups, it's about BTS, and maybe it's NCT, TXT, or Stray Kids. So essentially, it's gone back to where only the big three companies have boy groups that dominate rather than it being girl groups who are regulated to a handful from the big three. Well, that is until hype swallows every K-pop company and then everyone's part of the same label. So that's the end. Don't take it too seriously. I didn't do much research in this, and most points were anecdotal based on my own observations. I just wanted to add on to the conversation of why girl groups are so successful when they were mostly maligned in the 2010s with my feelings and my theories. So yeah, thanks.